Welcome everyone to today's CSIA partner webinar, 7 ways to boost profitability with modern HMI SCADA. My name is Colin Hammond and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 40 countries. Our mission is to advance the practice of control system integration to benefit our members and their clients. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process industries everywhere have access to low risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain and exceed business goals. To highlight just a few of our many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. CSIA's Business Insurance Program offers members an excellent insurance program for business owners, subcontractors, and more. The program includes members from all over the world enjoying the peace of mind that comes with CSIA insurance. Clients in all industries are now seeking integrators with the CSIA certification alongside ISO. They recognize CSIA's certified integrators' commitment to industry standards and business acumen. As a result, being certified can shorten the sales cycle. CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the premier automation guide featuring system integrators and suppliers who provide industrial, manufacturing, and process automation solutions. For integrators and suppliers, it's a place to market their expertise. Clients will find white papers, case studies, capabilities, contact information, and engage in conversation directly with CSIA members. Please follow CSIA's online events calendar for all upcoming webinars, including both partner webinars and business webinars. CSIA's business webinars features topics handpicked by CSIA leadership to help you run your business. CSIA's partner webinars are opportunities given to CSIA's industry partners to address hot topics and demonstrate their expertise. You won't want to miss these opportunities to learn from the comfort of your own office or home. And for more information about CSIA, please visit our website or contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenter, Ranbir Saini. Ranbir Saini is the Senior Director of Product Management for Automation Software at GE Digital, which includes the industry-leading iFix and Simplicity HMI SCADA software used by thousands of organizations around the world. Ranbir has nearly 20 years of experience delivering industrial automation, operations management, and media content creation software to OEM, municipal, and enterprise customers. He has a passion for designing compelling and innovative solutions in the physical and digital space that make a meaningful difference to customers, human experiences, and society. Outside of work, this passion has led him to venture into architectural design, such as residential houses and doors, as well as having an ongoing pursuit to create the perfect cup of chai. And I will now turn it over to our distinguished presenter. Welcome, Ranbir.
Thanks a lot, Colin. And it is true, I do really love my chai. So I'm really excited to be joining you today. And us at GE Digital, one of our key goals moving forward really is we really want to work really closely with the integrator community and to together deliver great outcomes for our customers. So please reach out to me after this presentation if you guys would like to converse more with myself and the greater GE Digital team. All right, let's get started. So, before I go into the talking about 7 ways to produce greater productivity, I want to kind of start with talking more about just the overall landscape that we're in today. So, our industry is changing, as you all know. There's a lot of new technologies coming in when it comes to IoT, and these are things like sensors and cheaper sensors and smart sensors. It could be high-speed networks. It can be the great computational power that comes from the cloud, as well as just when it comes to the type of devices people can use today. And so with that, what we're seeing now with customers is they're also trying to see how can they leverage that technology to get greater outcomes. And so there really is an opportunity for integrators to be able to try to bridge the gap between the technology and the problems that customers want to solve. And from an automation software perspective, one thing I think it's really critical to recognize is that this is now not just happening in some verticals, industries within our space, it's happening across all of them. And an example of that would be, you would think someone like water, wastewater is a more conservative space where there is, smaller margins, so there's less ability to change. But even in that space, like as we talk to some of our customers, like one specific one I can think of on top of my head, he was telling me how based on the government mandates, they are now really looking at how can they use technology to do things like reduce the amount of leakage, which is a mandate coming from the government, or like figure out ways that they can increase the actual throughput based on government regulations and the efficiencies that they need to have. And so, they don't have the ability because of their margins to be able to do that by having more people. So they're really looking at ways of using technology to make those things a reality. All right, and so based on that, let's go through and talk about 7 ways we can boost profitability for integrators. So number 1, I think one of the key things to consider as customers are looking at this more from how to solve problems, achieve certain goals, is you want to think beyond delivering the customer a point solution. Like it could be HMI SCADA, it could be Historian. Really, a way to actually provide greater value to the customer, become the trusted advisor, is really thinking about what we call the digital plant, which is the entire plant operations or enterprise for that customer. And so as integrators, you guys are really in the right position to be able to do this, because what we're seeing with a lot of other people coming into this space with all the new changes and opportunity, they don't have expertise when it comes to more like the control systems and the manufacturing execution systems. They're generally coming in as more startups and they want to be able to layer on top, but so that they cannot provide a complete holistic solution for entire plant operations. Versus as you guys being integrators, being subject matter experts in all the different areas of the plant, you really can actually use technology and the tool sets to deliver a holistic solution to the end customer. And I think another key thing to recognize about that is customers, as you guys probably know, they really are sensitive to not disrupting the actual operations of the plant and having to rip and replace what they currently have there because the cost is high of that. And so the more you're able to actually create these new solutions for the customer seamlessly on top of what they have today, the more happy the customer will be and the more successful you will be. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was from the perspective of a digital plant, it's really where I see the industry going is more a hybrid cloud model. I do believe that things like execution will continue to remain in the plant floor, but there will be ways to leverage the cloud, as we're even seeing today with customers, for things like optimizations and to do things like storage, for example. And so it's really about thinking about what is the right tool set and technology that can be used to deliver the right solution to the customer in the most efficient way. And so that's not always necessarily just an HMI SCADA. It could be a Historian, it could be MES, it could be other tools that provide the right solution to the end customer. So, once you think about the entire plant operation, the customer problem, one of the key things is how do you deliver that to the users? And so that's where the key kind of construct you really need to do is think about how can you go from being focused on HMI to really the next generation of solutions and IoT applications for customers, which I like to call an intelligent user interface. And if you look at that from the end user perspective, as they're seeing what's happening, they're really thinking about like, okay, well, I hear about these technologies, I hear about this data. How can I be able to actually access that information in a way that it would be useful for me in applications? And I want to be able to do that in real time. I don't want something that's, like days old or even hours old. I want it to be truly real time. At the same time, they want to use that data to really make informed decisions, and they want to access it on their devices, right? And that could be like within say it's a manufacturing plant. Like I know a customer where they give every single user within the plant an actual phone, and they use that phone actually for communication. And it could be that, it could be another manufacturer I know which is purely tablet-based now. They're using tablets for all their operators to do all their manufacturing processes. And so that's kind of a critical thing in regards to the expectancies of the users now have changed. And so they are expecting a different type of experience and a different way of delivering that experience as well. And so what are the steps to actually realize that intelligent user interface? Number one is being able to help the customer aggregate all their data. Especially as they add more sensors and they try to acquire more data, it's really about being able to actually aggregate the data and actually contextualize it in a way that actually has meaning, right? Because when you have a lot of data, but if you can't have meaning in it, it's not very valuable. And so step one is that once you do that, is enabling the customer to have more visibility and transparency in what's actually happening in their plant, especially for the more senior stakeholders, right? That could be a plant manager, that's a line supervisor, and frankly, it could even be like a VP of a region for a larger enterprise where they want to see what's happening across the region. And so once you have that ability to actually give them that real-time visibility, the next step is really then providing all users the ability to start being able to access that information in a way they can do analysis and they can collaborate together to actually improve their plant operations. And so it's really empowering the greater staff. And then over time, really where that will lead to is going to, I believe, truly will be analytics. And I think in regards to analytics, and you hear a lot about it, some of those can be more advanced things, such as having root cause detection of, for example, alarms. It could be a flooding or fleeting alarm. But other things can be just looking at the information that we currently have in our SCADA, such as like it could be the high-low limits set for alarm or for a set point, and if you're going out of it, can you provide notifications to someone to indicate that's happening within your plant operations? And as I talk about the data and the data gathering and the first step of aggregation, I think a great thing to always articulate to the customer as they try to go on this journey is the power of using the SCADA to actually collect the data. And so in some cases, it totally makes sense, go add some more smart sensors to a piece of equipment. In other situations, that might not be possible. It might actually just be really hard to maybe quantify the data from a sensor or just be hard to access it. So, truly showing them how you can use this data as a virtual sensor or use the HMI as a way to gather data from the actual user by them entering it are other ways to get that data to actually come up with those outcomes. And the other part of that aggregation, which I still see a lot. I was just at a plant last week. Is there still is a lot of plants using paper, and if you think about that, so yes, it's easy in a certain way because it's what they're doing today. But when all the data is on paper, it's very hard for you to try to figure out how to actually make your operators as a whole consistent and efficient. And so the more that you can help the actual customers digitize those processes and create standard operating procedures, the more value you can show them in the actual output and throughput, right? And there's an actual customer that we worked with an integrator where we helped them standardize their operating procedures, and one of the great outcomes they saw was a substantial reduction in this graph that they had by having the consistency across the operators and best practices. So that's a lot about aggregating the data and really visualizing it. So one of the key things is how do you actually build those intelligent user interfaces. And from an integrator perspective, you really want to have rapid application development tools. And so that way you can really reduce the time it takes to build and deploy those solutions. And when I say rapid application development, I'm talking about things such as how do you make it easy to connect? How do you ensure that the communication across all those different technologies is secure? And a big part, truly for you guys, I believe, is the configuration and build tools you need to actually build those experiences and those IoT applications, as well as making it easy to deploy them once you have built them. And so if you look at that from a kind of the user journey of doing that, it comes down to you have a concept definition, you define the data, you create the operational logic, you create the HMI design. And that traditionally is done by quite a manual process, right? You look at mapping what is in the PLC to the SCADA and creating the tags manually. You have to create all the kind of relationships between that. You need to then build custom screens for each piece of equipment or station and line. And you're writing a lot of scripting code. And it takes quite a bit of time and effort, right? And then when you change something, it's really hard to manage that across the entire plant. And so if you think of it more from, where do we see the future of that process and journey being, it's more about really using one is different technologies. And so going for more from native type of designer building tools to more web-based tools, which are going to not require you to do scripting by having more out of the box. And the starting point of that journey should be more, okay, can we actually extract more of the data from the controllers? And you can actually browse the data from controllers, and that could be everything from units of measure to other types of information as limits or visualization, and being able to actually map that to a model. And by being able to map it to a model that actually represents the plant, you're able to then leverage kind of economies of scale. And what I mean by that is by mapping it to a model and actually creating things like equipment types, you're able to then say, okay, here is how you want to define a pump. And once I do that, I can actually now put behaviors on all pumps within the plant. And I can do then also things like by having a model, is I can actually query the model to represent the information I want to visualize for the end users within the applications. And I can add things like events and notifications to that. For example, a good example would be, say you want to help the customer digitize what they do with and-ons and go to a more like e-and-on type solution that's going to be more digital based. To do that, you want to be able to do things like create notifications. And so once you have that ability to model the information, the other part is how do you map that to actually creating a visualization from And really, I think that's a critical part, especially moving forward, because as I mentioned now, I think there'll be more and more demand from your customers to create a multitude of IoT applications, not just traditional HMIs. And so by having the right tools where you're able to do things like drag and drop, you're able to actually have a rich set of visualization tools that don't just let you do dashboards, but build real meaty, rich applications with things like controls and visualization and navigation are really critical. And one other thing I wanted to mention is there is other opportunities here also for integrators in regards to thinking about how can you actually extend the system and actually create your own signature or your own solutions or applications by industry. Because as this happens, what customers are looking for is really things that meet their need in their industry versus generic solutions. So this is really an opportunity for integrators to build those custom solutions, not custom, but those industry-specific solutions for those customers. And one other kind of key thing to really think about is how do you ensure, as I mentioned earlier, that's accessible to users where they want to be and how they want to access the data. And so making sure that as you're building these and using the right tools, that you actually create more responsive solutions which can actually scale based on the type of device you have. And that could be a phone, that could be a tablet, that could be a desktop, for example. So, now we talked about kind of the rapid application development tools. There is key technologies that can really enable that. And so I'll just talk a little bit about that as well. So when it comes to technologies, and one thing I think we're going to see more and more with things like open process automation organization, which us at CSIA are a great organization, are a great part of as well, is that customers want to be able to have an open ecosystem. They don't want to be stuck into proprietary protocols or technologies where they're not be able to have more flexibility in what they're using across their entire operations. And so really by using technologies and standards such as OPC 8 and MQTT, that provides you that ability to have a more standard-based way of actually doing things like configuration, connectivity, and data exchange. And of course, I think the other critical part when you talk to those customers then is like showing that what you're building and what you're creating is based off of standards. And so when you can actually articulate that the solutions you're building are using standards such as ISA 101 for high performance HMI or 18.2 for alarms, you can really show that how this is a vetted, proven way to actually design the solution that's optimal for the end user. And other things, as I mentioned earlier as well, so web-based technologies are really going to help you in regards to deployment. And more when it comes to things like cloud in the future, there really is an opportunity to use the cloud to do things like centralized configuration management, for example, and simplified deployment where you could do things like help the customer create a more test environment where they can test the updates that they might request of you or new versions before they actually deploy it on-premise within their actual runtime operations. And also, I think APIs are critical, and having standard-based ways to have APIs to do everything from extensibility to silent deployment. And then leading into more future-looking is machine learning AI. There's a lot happening in that technology area. And so there's a lot of new types of languages coming and technologies such as it could be Python, it could be Panda, it could be R, but there's a lot of different technologies coming there. And so from a customer perspective, where you could help them is bridging the way to be able to use any of those technologies to be able to actually get those optimizations. And so going a little bit further into OPC, so I think OPC, the evolution of that standard is critical to what we do in our space, because by adding things like a model, it really provides the ability now to have a more robust solution where you can actually start adding more meaning to the data and be able to leverage that meaning to do more optimizations. And the other part is by being now secure by design and using things like certificates and getting rid of the old, COM port configuration, it makes it much, much easier to be able to actually configure the system and deploy the system as well. And I think some other things really to think about is if you think about how does this affect the customer and what they can do, if you think about the changes in, for example, manufacturing today, where now more and more manufacturing customers are doing like smaller runs of different products to kind of meet the niches of customers and to create that more scarcity, there's more configuration and change they want to do. And so by using something like OPC, now I would say it's similar to like thinking about like a smart home where you have certain equipment or connected to your hub, which would be in OPC, the global discovery server. And now imagine if you want to increase production because one of these new products that you released is doing really well. And so you want to just add those new pieces of equipment to your actual operations. You want it to automatically be discovered and all the data pulled from those equipment and the PLC, and that could be everything from a model to the tags to alarm limits to even visualization, and really quickly kind of plug and play way be able to actually then start being able to actually leverage the equipment from an HMI control perspective. And some of the other really interesting things I would say it's great to look more into in regards to OPC is some of these companion specs, right? And so companion specs are a way to actually have a predefined model for certain vertical industries, which I believe over time will become more standardized as a way for customers to be able to then say, okay, now I have a common way to define maybe, for example, my pharma space, and so I can actually then have other vendors be able to provide me capabilities on top of that. And so I also want to talk a little bit about MQTT. So if you're not familiar with MQTT, it's really become a lot more used and talked about now as people consider IoT and the way to actually connect things such as smart sensors. And the reason for that is a couple of different reasons. One is that MQTT really works well in kind of low bandwidth type of environments and also in low power. So it works well with things like smart sensors where you want to directly be able to push information from the sensor. And the technology, the way it works is a publish subscriber methodology where what happens is a sensor, for example, that would be using MQTT would be able to publish the actual data to something like you see here on the right-hand side, which is a broker. So think that kind of like a hub. It listens to all the published messages from all the MQTT methods of communication, and it can actually hold on to those. And then when you have different clients, they're able to subscribe to those messages, and then this way they can kind of have that broker to ensure that they actually get those messages and they're not lost in the communication layers. And so it's really becoming quite prevalent in kind of new offerings created by hardware manufacturers for that reason. And also, I want to also just quickly mention REST. So REST has been around for a long time. It's used tons in software development, but it also is an opportunity for you as integrators to help the customer as they're trying to consolidate all their in-house applications as well. So many times those are built using something like a database. They might have a web-based application, but more and more as customers try to become more efficient, we're seeing that they want to consolidate that and they want to have a centralized environment and platform to be able to bring all those applications together to really get a kind of more seamless experience and be able to leverage the insights across all the data sets. And that's where REST becomes really a great tool to use. So, once you kind of go and you start building those solutions, the other thing to consider really is how do you do it in a manner we can quickly show value to the customer. And so this is really a kind of fundamental thing when you think about IoT and digital transformation. And there is been quite a bit of actually studies and analysis done in regards to who has been successful and who is not within the industry. And one thing that all those studies have found is generally the customers that have been successful, they generally have always started by starting small. So they say, okay, that here is a clear goal or problem that we want to solve. They start with a small pilot or POC, for like example, it could be a single line or single plant. And then they evolve and they grow and they expand off of that. And so that is what I'd suggest is a key way as you try to help the customer and guide them through a journey of becoming more digitized. It's find those small ways to quickly show value and show improvements and expand over time. And the other, I think, key thing is there's an opportunity, if you look at, again, from the research, generally the types of customers and organizations that have been successful are the ones that standardize what they do from plant to plant. So you as being a trusted advisor can help the customer with that. You can say, okay, well, I can help you actually with the standardization and creating consistency across the entire organization so you can then start leveraging the consistency to get greater meaning and aggregation at higher levels to get more optimizations. And, if you look at that in regards to what does that mean for SCADAs and the type of HMI solutions you want, and then you should really think about how you can do that layering at different levels, right? And that can be like embedding the SCADA, for example, within the controller as a way to acquire the data, to actually having it more on the control level, but layering even higher levels, which could be all the way up into the cloud for more a enterprise SCADA or like a more like mesh type of solution where you have these multiple layers of aggregation. And that applies not just to HMI SCADA. That can apply, for example, to historians as well, where you want to actually have plant level and then you want to have enterprise level and you want to federate across all those. And from an end user perspective, they shouldn't have to know that there is that type of layered approach, but this gives them a lot more accessibility to all the information and across more different roles as well. And so now I also want to talk about one of the key kind of insights that we have learned at GE Digital and how we're thinking about helping the customers in a more structured way with a practice, which we call digital Kaizen. And so I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Kaizen and the whole concept of continuous improvements. You know, Toyota is one of the great examples of this, and really the key things with Kaizen is like how do you continuously improve and empower the users to help you with those continuous improvements. And a common kind of methodology of doing that is using the PDCA Lifecycle. And that really is similar to any type of scientific experiment example where you have like a hypothesis that comes from someone, and what you want to do is you want to test a hypothesis by actually doing some type of implementation. You want to check what the results are, and you want to be able to then adjust based on those results and continue to do that in a circular manner to get small improvements that over time leads to dramatic improvements within your organization. And so if you look at that from when we say digital Kaizen, what we are seeing and what we from our customers and as they use our technology and tools is there's an opportunity to help them really doing that from a more digital perspective by digitizing all the processes and democratizing all the tools and applications to enable everyone within the plant organization to be able to collaborate and continuously improve together. And so it's really having that technology as a way to come up with that certain hypothesis, create an application very quickly, kind of check the results and iterate over time like that. And so some of the key kind of tenets to really create that kind of practice is you need really easy to use tools, you need to have them accessible by everyone, and you need connectivity to all the different data within the plant. And so if you look at that from what I mentioned earlier with digital transformation and that journey, it's really about, once you have already aggregated data, is how do you make it easy to fuse the data together for it to provide that meaning and make it easy to, as you come up with different kind of opportunities for optimizations, to choose the right data, quickly create an application, which could be a pilot or some kind of POC, and test to see if it actually is helping you in the way you thought it would with those optimizations and continuous improvements. And so the other key thing I think about this is I truly believe, again, what I mentioned earlier, was open ecosystems. And so to be able to do that type of continuous improvements, what you really have to ensure is that you have the ability to provide the customer some type of centralized environment to rapidly build applications that are not just dashboards, but truly read and write, where you can aggregate data from, it could be from a vendor like GE and our applications, but it could be directly from those smart sensors or from the PLCs, or it could be embedded at that level as well if that's how the user wants to access it, and from also other third-party solutions. And that, in some cases, that is actually customer in-house technology or solutions, right? Because many times our customers now have built things internally with their own relational database, and they want to be able to access that all through a centralized environment. And I think other simple examples that, like one I can think of just from a while ago was we had a customer who was talking to us about they want to now put webcams everywhere within the plant. But they didn't want that now to be a separate application that they have to go to. They want that to be integrated with the rest of the IoT applications so they can just kind of seamlessly see those cameras in the context, for example, of their HMI, or it could be, like it could be like user entry or quality entry type of applications as well. And I cannot state enough how important it is that as you think about helping the customer with this, is you have to think about all the different personas. So it's everyone from you guys as the integrators to it could be a process engineer, it's to the managers, it's to the plant supervisors, it's to the VPs that want to actually see what's happening across all the plants within their region. So another kind of way I want to kind of re-articulate that to kind of really make sure that those kind of concepts make sense is, so you think of the way you think of a traditional HMI SCADA and what you can do there, it's really about that level 2-ish network, in the Purdue model, and providing monitor and control. and into really collecting and aggregating the data from those industrial computers. And so if you think of kind of from an IoT perspective, IoT applications, and having a centralized environment to build optimal solutions across the entire plant, then you don't necessarily need all these other data to go through the SCADA. So you want to have a higher level application environment that actually can aggregate the data not just from the SCADA layer and the control layer, but from these other sources as well. And then once you have that, then you're able to then allow the customer to have multiple applications for multiple users that are more tailored for their experience and their devices. And like I mentioned, this is also an opportunity as integrators to build your out-of-the-box ones yourselves by vertical for the customer to actually enable them to really get that great success and outcome over time. All right, and so we're on to tip number 7. And so I talked a lot about this through the entire conversation, but let's talk a little bit more about data. And so, data really is the key thread for all of this and really empowering this next industrial revolution. And so one of the key things to consider for customers is how can they really be successful in efficiently storing the data in a secure manner and have high-speed access to that data. And so I think this is an opportunity as customers come to you and talk about these problems. If they're not using things like an historian to really be optimal in that data storage, you can talk to them about it and show them how this can add value. And I think, again, I would say the key thing is starting small and then growing over time with the customer as well, so they can understand and realize what they're getting by adding things like a historian to store all the data, and really doing that over time in a way that can scale. So it starts, it could be in the plant, and it could eventually be like having it across the entire enterprise and having that federation to be able to do that cross-plant collaboration and analysis as well. And the other kind of key part of that, moving forward, and when I talk about that OPC Remodel, I think the really key way to think about it is that is, again, should be layered. There's going to be a model over time as you get into newer controllers, which will be at the control level. You want to have a model at that SCADA level. You might have another model that's going to be an expansion of that at the MES level. And you also want to have a greater, more detailed that model and more expansion of the model at the historian level. But so you want to be able to just be able to continue to carry that thread and use what's done at a lower level at a higher level versus starting from scratch. And so really having the ability to do that, I think, is really critical to provide that type of holistic solution. And the other key part, as I talked about the initial journey of intelligent user interface, is there's a data aggregation, but the other part is also the analysis. So having rich analysis tools are critical, and they're not just critical for the end user. I think they can also help you as an integrator. And really, to me, that is the starting point of analytics. And so, the first part is like doing analysis and seeing things like anomalies, for example, and that can lead to then starting to create analytics, other types of software-based optimizations off of that analysis. But you also want to use that type of analysis and trending to be able to like project or see like, based on this trend, what's going to happen in a month or 2 months. Or like when you have some type of optimization, it could be like that you guys created, it could be that the customer created or from a third party. Are you able to layer what the output of that analytic is on top of the information that you're trending today for that, maybe that equipment or that piece of line? And so that's why that trending analysis is a critical part of that journey for optimizations. So in conclusion, one thing I hope you guys get from the information presented is there is a land of opportunity for you as integrators today, because with all the changes happening, there is changing requirements on the customer end, which requires changing in the implementation of what they have within their plant. And so by using things like rapid application development tools and technology such as OPC, you can really help them realize those types of new types of problems that they want to solve and outcomes they want to actually achieve. And I think the other part is, like, as I mentioned with us in G Digital, with things like digital Kaizen as a practice, it's an opportunity for you guys to actually become the subject matter experts in those types of practices and be the ones that educate and train the customers in how to be successful in this new industrial revolution. And it really leads the path to where they want to move over time to the analytics and optimizations through those new technologies. And so I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. You can see right here from the top left is my email address. I would love to continue the conversation with you guys, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to discuss further. And also, if you have any questions about GE as a whole and our products, I'm happy to get you in contact with the right people.
All right, thank you, Ranbir.
No problem.
So, yeah, we have a couple of questions on the side, and we're going to go ahead and answer some of these. So we have one for a wastewater plant that uses iFix, SCADA, and Historian. If I were looking to take small steps toward digital transformation, what would be a good mini pilot project to embark on?
So that is a great question. And Juliana, I would actually love to chat with you more offline as well about this. So I think it's a couple of things. What I mentioned earlier is it always starts with kind of understanding, like, is there some, for that specific customer, what are kind of some of the problems that they have or some of the outcomes they want to achieve? And once you can have a good sense of that, then you can start looking at, okay, well, how can you help the customer with that hypothesis? And so, maybe the starting point is talking to the customer, talking to people on the plant floor and asking them, okay, well, kind of what are those problems, or what do you think things you can do to actually create some improvements in efficiencies within your organization, and then actually helping them with that by actually getting that data, access to that data, and creating those kind of piloted applications and solutions. And so that was what I would suggest. This kind of comes back to my whole idea. I mentioned that the idea of that digital Kaizen. Start small, but make sure you have a clearly defined or relatively clearly defined starting hypothesis of a problem or outcome that you want to achieve.
Okay, and then we have another one from the same person. Does GE have controllers that have embedded SCADA and or Historian?
That's a great question as well. So we have, so one of our tight partners is Emerson. And so what we have done is actually with that partnership, we do have embedded controllers. And we also have other partners we have through our greater channel partners organization with embedded controllers as well. So I don't have in hand a list of all those, but I can definitely follow up with me. I can give you more detail of that. And like I said, also Emerson is a key partner of ours we work very tightly with, who actually has taken over more of our controller hardware. And we actually work tightly with them to actually have that embedded holistic solution with them.
Okay, thank you. And looks like, did Emerson acquire HMI SCADA software from GE?
So that's a great segue from what we just were talking about. So I love it. So no, Emerson actually has not acquired our software. So Simplicity, iFix, GE Historian, Plant Applications. The software is all still a part of GE Digital and GE. What Emerson had acquired was more the controller hardware and the controller programming software. And so we have like a really tight partnership with them in regards to how do we work with them in regards to our software and their hardware, but that is what is the actual relationship. And so if you want more information on Simplicity and iFix and Historian, again, there's my email address there. Happy to get you more details of what we're doing. And there's a lot of great things that are actually coming. And so I'd love to show you all that new great technology and capabilities that we are building.
Okay, thank you. We have another one. A lot has changed with HMI SCADA licensing. Has GE's changed? What's included now?
So there actually has been, we are actually doing a lot of changes. Some actually are quite recent. And so first off, there is one thing we've done over the years, both iFix and Simplicity, they're very rich applications, highly scalable, highly stable, and we include a lot of capabilities in the core HMI SCADA. From a licensing perspective, we've been making a lot of changes. One actually that I think would be quite interesting to folks when it comes to digital transformation is imagine if your customer did not have Historian. One thing we've actually done now is we actually have a more subscription-based Historian licensing where the customer is actually not charged for storage. The licensing model charges them for accessing the data. And the reason to do something like that is it's a great way to get a customer started with the kind of data aggregation, and they will, as they see the value of accessing the data, that's when they actually are paying for the data versus just storing it and not using it. And similarly, we're doing a lot of other things in regards to providing things such as free options where you get unlimited clients for HMI SCADA, as well as other types of licensing models as well. So I probably can't go into all the details just like this over the conversation, but yeah, please reach out to me and I can provide you all the details of all the new great pricing and licensing opportunities that you would have, and some being subscription, some being a more classic perpetual-based licensing as well.
Okay, thank you, Rambir. What is the future for in-plant installations of SCADA and HMI as cloud-based systems becoming popular? As cloud-based systems are becoming popular.
Yes. So the future, I truly believe it's hybrid cloud, and this applies to not only HMI SCADAs but MES as well as things like Historian. And I can give you some examples, and I'll start maybe with a non-HMI example like MES. So currently, one of the things we have done with plant applications, our MES solution, is we have what is now called the Manufacturing Data Cloud. And what that is it is now a cloud-based storage. And what large customers are doing is they're actually pushing all the data that was originally in plant applications into the cloud to do more data analysis, but also the other key value of doing those kind of things is they're reducing their actual hardware cost and IT infrastructure cost. And so they're realizing values not just from doing things like analytics, which in a lot of cases they haven't even started that. More they're starting to realize value, and by doing that is they reduce their overall cost, and they're able to actually make the actual execution engines more lightweight and really focus on executing. And so that same philosophy applies to HMI SCADA. And so, you still want the execution to be on premise in many cases because they're mission critical systems. Like if it's a water or wastewater plant, it could be, like a subway station. But there is ability to start using the cloud for things like centralized management, remote monitoring, right, and support. And that's really going to be, I think, critical places where you'll see more of the cloud side is those kind of things, or like or examples that when you have geographically dispersed assets and you want to do like a virtual RTU where you are going to do remote control in certain situations like renewables with wind, where in those situations there's less issue if there's not an immediate change. Like if you're turning on or off the turbine, the wind turbine, there's nothing that can actually happen that could actually cause any type of major accident. In those situations, you'll see more and more cloud, but that's really, I think, the key things is cloud more for the storage of data, the centralized oh, somebody's got a mute there. But I would say so that's some of the kind of what you see where you'll see the changes in that manner, but really thinking about but on-premise as the execution. The other thing that I do believe that will happen over time, which I think is an opportunity for integrators specifically, and we have started to look at this more future-looking, is SCADA as a service. So as those technologies become more prevalent, there's opportunities again to help certain customers in certain situations where, like, say, they're rolling out a new plant or they want to try something. and they don't want to actually have to use their internal staff to actually create that deployment. They could actually, could we, and I believe this will happen over time, is have you guys at Integrators actually provides the SCADA as a service, where you're actually doing a lot of the actual deployment and configuration in the cloud for that customer, for that plant, or for that opportunity. And then as they start seeing that actually become successful, they can then bring it into the fold of their standardized across the entire enterprise, but doesn't necessarily have to start that way. And so I think that's another kind of key kind of future looking of where the industry will go.
Okay, thank you, Rambir. We have another one. What kind of training do you provide to integrators?
So a part of what we do in GE Digital as a part of putting arms around the integrator community is we have a solution provider program. And being a member of the solution provider program gives you things like free training courses, as well as online badging based on being able to go through the training and then you're more being a certified provider of the GE Digital products and solutions. And if you have any specific needs, or even actually frankly feedback or suggestions on how to make the solution provider program better, please reach out to me. It's actually something I've been spending a lot of time with talking to individual integrators as well as some of our channel partners to really make sure that we can actually make that solution of more value to you as integrators.
Okay. We'll take a few more here. If I'm designing a system for the first time, what kind of help can you give me? Do I have to pay for it, or do you help integrators through first projects?
So great question. We definitely will provide you guidance on your first projects. We really want to support the integrator community, and love to hear about what are those kind of opportunities and those projects and where you need assistance. And when we really want to help you do that together. And as I mentioned earlier, really the goal is to provide the optimal experience to the end customer, and that won't happen from us as GE Digital on our own. It's really the ecosystem of us combined with you guys and like the channel partners that will make that a reality, right? And so the more that we can work closely with you guys to help create the optimal solution experience for the customer, the more success it will be for everyone.
Okay. How about what kind of commercial assistance can you provide?
So we have quite a dedicated organization for commercial assistance, and that comes for everything in providing training for integrators, or even providing support in opportunities and deals. So like, if it's about actually the quoting or other aspects of what the customer needs or the RFP, we have dedicated people that can help you with that. And we also, would love to work with the integrator community when it comes to things like co-marketing or going together to events or creating branded literature or success stories. And so if there's anywhere you guys want more assistance from us and would like to work with us to really create that type of joint collaboration, really would be excited and happy to help with that.
Okay, thank you. And do you have an online forum for support?
Yes. So we do have online forum support, and we've actually had this for many years. And so it's a fantastic tool. There is a lot of great discussions in that forum, and there also is a lot of, because there's a lot of people in the forum, there's really quick responsiveness as well. We also have now added, as a part of GE Digital, a invitation-only user group online, and this is more like it's become more like also advisors, And so if people are interested in becoming a part of that and are not already, please reach out to us, and we would be happy to include you in that as well.
Okay, thank you. And is all of your product documentation online?
Yes, so all of our product documentation is online. And one thing I would say is that we are continuing to do that, but we also think that more and more our goal is to have more videos. So what you'll find is that if you look online, even if you search, for example, in YouTube for iFix or Simplicity, you'll see that there's many training videos. So you can get those from our site, or you can search for them. But more and more, we're really focused on creating more video material that only doesn't give you training, but also helps you in being able to communicate and articulate to customers the values of solutions as well.
Okay. And last one here, how can I build in more reliability?
So when it comes to reliability, I think one of the key things to think about is, when a customer is looking at that, one is they want to have a solution that has failover built into it. So it's making sure that you have the right solutions and architecture to do things like high availability by having redundancy, right? And in regards to, it could be HMI SCADA, it could be Historian, for example. And so I think that's one part of that is just kind of the failover reliability. The other thing to consider there is disaster recovery, so ensuring there's ways to actually have a off-site storage as well that you can use to recover from in case there is some more substantial type of issue. And actually, funny enough, hardly ever do hear about that happening, but there was actually an issue that one of our customers had with a cyber attack about 2 weeks ago. And it brought down their entire system. And so they actually had to use that disaster recovery to go back to a good state. And so we worked really closely with them to do that in a very quick, expedient time so they could get back up and running. And I think the other part is about, when you talk about reliability, one is like from uptime availability solution. The other thing is about ensuring you have robust technology and solutions like a Historian that actually can ensure that reliability of the data. And another kind of key aspect of that, and this is something I think is critical, which I didn't mention so far, was quality of data. And so, as people are trying to solve problems and create new solutions, one of the starting points as you aggregate the data is making sure that you can ensure that there is a good quality of data and there isn't like huge gaps in data, because without a good quality of data and having data from all the different sources in a consistent manner, you really cannot create meaning from it and be able to understand what's actually happening. All right, so with that being the last question and us being, I think, right at the top of the hour, again, thanks everyone for joining. Like I said, I'm super excited to work with CSIA. I'm also a part of the Digital Transformation Task Force, and I was at Asheville, and it was great talking to a bunch of you folks and learning from you guys what you're doing. So yeah, please reach out to me, and we'd love to talk to you more. And thanks a lot, Colin, for having us.
Sure, thanks. So on behalf of CSIA, I'd like to thank Rambier for this informative discussion. I'd also like to thank all those attending. We hope you found the webinar informational. And we'd also like to remind you that a recording of this webinar will be available for viewing within 30 days of this event. Please visit the CSIA website to view this recording or past webinar you may have missed. This concludes our program for today. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a good day. Thank you, Rambier.
Thank you. Bye.